They found her screaming, sweating, and rolling on the dirty floor. Nobody understood what was happening until they looked closer. What was crawling into her body that day changed her life forever. This is her story. The compound looked peaceful from the outside. Trim hedges, painted walls, and a large compound that told of comfort. But inside, Amaka's world was far from peaceful. She was barely 9 years old when her mother died. Her father, shattered and alone, remarried after a year. The new wife, Auntie Raluchi, came in with two things, her toddler daughter, Nneka, and a smile that never quite reached her eyes. At first, Amaka tried. She smiled, she greeted, she offered to help. But soon, the beatings began. Subtle at first, a slap when she broke a plate, a scolding if she didn't wash the baby's clothes properly. Then it got worse. You think because your mother is dead, you own this house? Raluchi would sneer, her arms folded, voice loud enough for the neighbors. Let me remind you, this is my husband's house now. I'm the one in charge. By age 11, Amaka was no longer a child. She was the house girl. Each morning, she woke up before dawn, fetching water, scrubbing the compound, cooking breakfast and washing clothes for 5 people before school. Her palms were rough. Her knees carried the scars of kneeling for hours. Nneka, just 2 years younger, was the exact opposite. While Amaka was in the backyard rinsing plates with cold water, Nneka would be inside watching cartoons, munching on biscuits. If their father ever asked why Nneka didn't help, Raluchi would quickly cover. She's still a child now. Or should I let her become a village slave like Amaka? One afternoon, Amaka came home from school to find her clothes missing from the line. She searched everywhere. No sign. That night, she overheard Nneka laughing with her friend about how she had cut her uniform into pieces just to teach that oversabi girl a lesson. Still, Amaka said nothing. The worst came one rainy season when Amaka fell sick. High fever, chills and vomiting. Her father was out of town for work. Raluchi told her to sleep on the cold floor in the corridor, saying, I don't want your sickness to affect my daughter. No medicine, no food, just a blanket and darkness. Amaka curled up, crying silently. The rain poured heavily outside, matching the thunder in her head. By midnight, she crawled out of the house to a neighbor's window and knocked with the strength she had left. That knock saved her life. By morning, she was on a hospital bed, weak but breathing. And when her father returned, Raluchi spun the story as usual. She didn't tell me she was sick. I thought she was faking it to avoid chores. But her father's eyes lingered on Amaka's wrist, purple from a slap she never mentioned, and for the first time, doubt crept into his heart. Still, he did nothing. Amaka returned to school 2 weeks after her illness, thinner than before, but not broken. Her classmates noticed the bruises, but no one asked questions. Only her teacher, Mrs. Durojaye, pulled her aside one day. Amaka, are you alright at home? Yes, ma, she replied with a practiced smile. But Mrs. Durojaye wasn't fooled. She began to watch Amaka more closely. The way her uniform was always patched, her sandals worn out, her eyes tired yet focused, and the way she always had her homework done, even when others made excuses. She's a star, the teacher would say in staff meetings. If anyone in this class has a future, it's Amaka. At home, the punishment increased with every praise Amaka got at school. If she came first in class, Raluchi would hiss, is it because they keep calling your name in assembly that you now see yourself as better than my daughter? Nneka, already lazier by the day, hated school. She would fake stomach aches, tear pages from her notebook, and come home with blank report card. Still, she was the one who got new shoes, pocket money, and hugs. Amaka, a bowl of cold gari, and silence. When Amaka turned 15, her world narrowed even more. Her stepmother told her father She was now old enough to stop wasting time in school and should start learning tailoring. But for once, her father put his foot down. She will finish secondary school and go to university, he declared. Is the least her mother would have wanted. It was the first time in years that Amaka saw Raluchi speechless. Fueled by her father's unexpected stand, Amaka studied harder than ever. She borrowed textbooks, copied notes during breaks, and tutored her classmates for extra pens and pencils. At night, she read by candlelight, ignoring the mosquitoes and the heat. Sometimes she fell asleep with her head on a chemistry textbook. Her dreams filled with bones and blood groups. The more she rose, the more Raluchi burned with envy. Books doesn't make a good wife, she would tell Nneka loudly enough for Amaka to hear. Some of them will finish school and still come back and sweep floors. But Amaka never replied. Her silence became her weapon, sharper than words, deeper than wounds. One day, as Amaka walked home under the scorching sun, carrying her torn school bag and a folder of application forms for scholarship exam, a man pulled up beside her in a sleek black car. He was tall, neatly dressed, and looked familiar. "Excuse me," he called. "Are you Amaka?" "Yes. I visited your house once. Your father's friend. I've heard a lot about you. I'd like to speak to your father. I'm interested in you." The sun was hot, but suddenly Amaka felt cold, not because of the man, but because she knew this would be the moment everything started to twist. The man's name was Mr. Ikenna. He was in his early 30s, a business owner with land and properties scattered across town. His smile was charming and his voice calm. When he came to the house that weekend, bearing gifts and soft words, Raluchi welcomed him like royalty. "You're very welcome. Please sit," she said, offering him the best chair and rushing to bring malt and granite. But the moment he mentioned Amaka as the reason for his visit, the smile on her face cracked ever so slightly. "Amaka? Really?" "Yes," she caught my eye. Her grace, her composure. "I hear she's very brilliant too." Raluchi managed a laugh. "Ah, yes, she is. Very serious girl. But you know, these days, it's not just books that matter. You need someone homely, warm, family-oriented." Ikenna nodded, not sensing the undertone. By evening, she had summoned her daughter Nneka to her room. "You will marry that man." "But mommy, he came for Amaka." Raluchi scoffed. "And so? He only thinks he wants her. You are the one who deserves that life. Amaka is just using pity to shine. Look at you. Beautiful, fresh, untouched by stress. And that's what men want. Not some girl who smells of bleach and kerosene." The plan was laid that night. Within days, Raluchi began plotting doubts. First, she told Ikenna that Amaka had a secret boyfriend, a Yahoo boy in school. Then she hinted that Amaka might have female issues and was spiritually troubled. She even paid a woman to visit and pose as a prophetess, claiming a vision that Amaka was cursed and would bring ruin to any man who married her. When Ikenna confronted Amaka, she stood quiet, eyes filled with shock. "I don't know what you're talking about," she whispered. But he had already begun to believe the whispers. I don't want drama in my life," he said awkwardly. "You're a good girl, I know, but maybe God has another path for us." 3 weeks later, an engagement invitation was sent out. Ikenna was marrying Nneka. Amaka didn't cry. She didn't even flinch. She simply folded the invitation and went back to reading her anatomy textbook. Her final year exams were approaching and she had no time for betrayal. But that night, when the house was asleep, she stepped outside, sat beneath the mango tree, and let one single tear fall. Not for Ikenna, but for every single time she thought she was finally going to be chosen. Nneka's wedding was loud. Gold lace, rented canopies, and a DJ who didn't stop playing until midnight. The neighbors couldn't stop talking about the decoration, the food, the bride's makeup, but inside the room where Amaka sat alone, none of it mattered. She had washed Nneka's wedding dress herself. She had cooked part of the food served to guests, and not once did Nneka say thank you. Married life hit Nneka like a slap. She entered the union expecting weekend getaways, a housemaid, and weekly cash gifts. Instead, she walked into a 2-bedroom flat where her new husband Ikenna had handed her a broom. "I hope you know how to clean," he said. "We are not rich enough to hire help." Nneka laughed awkwardly. "You're joking, right? I'm very serious." From that moment, the fantasy began to fade. She didn't know how to cook. She had always skipped kitchen chores. She didn't know how to wash clothes or even sweep properly. Within a week, the house smelled of sweat and stale food. Clothes piled up. Dishes stayed dirty for days. Pregnancy made it worse. Just 2 months in, she was constantly tired, using it as an excuse for everything. "I'm carrying your child," she snapped when Ikenna complained about the stench from the bathroom. "And I'm carrying this house," he barked. "You can't even flush the toilet." Their fights grew louder. Neighbors could hear them yelling at night. One day, Ikenna stormed out and drove to his in-laws' house. He didn't greet anyone. He simply stood before Raluchi and said, "Warn your daughter, I didn't marry a pig." Raluchi, embarrassed but proud, tried to cover up. Marriage has ups and downs. You know women during pregnancy. She's not pregnant in her mouth or her legs. She's just dirty. That night, Raluchi came to help clean the apartment herself. She scrubbed floors and washed bed sheets while Nneka lay on the sofa watching TikTok videos. "You better change, you," she hissed. "He said if you don't, he will leave you. And I won't fight for you again." Nneka rolled her eyes. "He won't go anywhere." But even their father heard of the disgrace. "I warned you, Raluchi," he said quietly. "This is the result of your parenting." And still, Nneka didn't learn. She promised to improve, but the house would return to filth 2 days later. She had no sense of shame, no urgency, no realization. It was a Thursday afternoon. The sun blazed without mercy. Inside the house, the ceiling fan creaked as it rotates lazily. The air was thick and the heat, the smell of the spoiled food, a forgotten pot of soup sat on a gas cooker, buzzing with flies. Dirty clothes were scattered on the floor like discarded turds. Nneka lay on a mattress on the bare floor, one hand fanning herself with an old magazine and the other lazily scratching her arm. She was 7 months pregnant now, heavier, slower and filthier than ever. The curtains were drawn halfway, the front door left wide open as usual. She hadn't had a bath that day. She hadn't changed her bedsheet in weeks. All around her, wrappers, nylon bags, half-eaten biscuits, and used cotton pads littered the floor. The sink in the kitchen was blocked. The toilet hadn't been flushed in 2 days, but none of that mattered to Nneka. She was too tired, too hot, too careless. She closed her eyes for a while, drifting into a light, uneasy sleep. The kind where you're not truly resting, just existing. She didn't hear it coming. The snake slithered in through the open front door. Its scales, dark and oily. It moved slightly, weaving its way around a bucket, under a chair, over a pair of soiled trousers, and then into the bedroom. Drawn by heat or the smell or something else, it found her there, half asleep, her gown carelessly raised above her knees. It slid closer and closer until a scream tore through the compound. Nneka sat bolt upright, eyes wide, arms flailing. She clutched her stomach and screamed again. "Snake! Snake! It entered me! Ah!" The neighbors rushed in. 3 women, 2 men, all barefoot, all shocked by what they saw. Nneka was rolling on the floor, blood between her legs. Her voice cracked from shouting. They saw the snake, tail still visible. Part of it had gone in. People screamed. Someone threw up. One woman fainted. Ikenna, who had just parked outside, burst in and froze. He didn't speak. He didn't move. He simply stared, wide-eyed, unable to believe what he was seeing. She was rushed to the hospital. There was no time to wait for an ambulance. Inside the emergency room, doctors whispered, Nurses shook their head, and by the time the sun set, the news had spread across the neighborhood like fire. The hospital corridor door was quiet, too quiet. Only the faint hum of machine and the occasional footsteps of nurses echoed through the ward. Nneka lay still on the bed, her eyes fixed on the ceiling, swollen from hours of crying. Her hair was undone, her face pale, and her lips cracked. When the doctors returned, flanked by 2 nurses, he didn't sit. He simply looked at her with tired, clinical sympathy. "We had to act fast to save your life," he said gently. "The snake was venomous. We managed to extract it, but the venom had spread." Her heartbeat grew louder in her ears. "We had to remove your womb. I'm sorry, and the baby didn't make it." Nneka blinked just once, then silence. She didn't scream, she didn't weep, she didn't move. The doctors waited for a response, but there was none, just a numb, distant stare. He nodded slowly and left the room. In the waiting area, Enkay sat, hunched over, rubbing his forehead. His shirt was soaked in sweat, his eyes bloodshot. He hadn't said a word since she was wheeled in. Raluchi paced back and forth, muttering to herself, "God, why now? Why my daughter, my only daughter?" Her voice shaking. People will laugh. They will say it's how I raised her. God forbid. Then, as if remembering something, she turned to Enkay. "You will not leave her, oh. I hope you're not thinking that. She needs you now more than ever." Enkay looked up slowly. His voice was cold. "I told you to raise her well. You gave me a woman who cannot cook, cannot clean, and now cannot give birth," she gasped. "So you're blaming me?" He stood. "I'm going home to pack her things. She'll go back to your house." By the time Amaka arrived at the hospital that evening, her white doctor coat still on, the news had already spread. She stood at the edge of the ward door, looking in at her stepsister, broken and empty on the hospital bed. She had only come because the matron called her directly. "She needs someone familiar," the woman had said. "You're the only one we could reach from her file." Amaka didn't speak. She didn't even step in. She just watched Nneka quietly. The same girl who mocked her, lied on her, took her suitor, called her house girl, now lying in a pool of her own failure. When she finally turned to leave, a nurse passing by greeted her with a smile. "Dr. Amaka, good evening. I didn't know you're related to that woman inside." Amaka smiled faintly and said, "We're not related," and walked away. 2 months later, the once lively compound of Amaka's father had grown quieter. The flowers that used to bloom in the front of their house were now withered. The laughter that once filled the air during Amaka's wedding preparation had disappeared. Even Raluchi no longer raised her voice. Nneka had returned home, not as a bride, not as a wife, but as a shadow of herself. She stayed locked in her room most days. She didn't cook, didn't clean, didn't speak unless spoken to. Her weight dropped, her skin dulled, and the proud girl who once snapped her fingers at her sister now avoided mirrors and people. Even her younger brother, who once adored her, barely said a word to her anymore. The shame in the house was thick. Their father watched all this quietly. He had aged in just a few months, his hair grayer, his shoulder heavier. Every time he looked at Amaka, he said nothing, but his eyes carried something close to guilt and pride. Amaka had become everything they said she couldn't be. A respected medical doctor, engaged to a kind man who adored her, an owner of a new car she bought with her own savings. She had moved into a small flat not far from the hospital and only came to visit every Sunday. Her presence now carried weight, not of anger, but of calm power. On one such visit, she found Raluchi waiting at the gate. "I know you don't owe me anything," the woman said, her voice shaky. "But I want to say thank you. You turned out well. I didn't treat you right, and now," her voice cracked, "now I see." Amaka looked at her, no hatred, no anger, just tired understanding. "I forgave you a long time ago," she said softly. Later that afternoon, Nneka walked into the sitting room, her eyes low. She sat beside Amaka silently, fiddling with her fingers like a child. I don't know how to live anymore, she whispered. Everyone avoids me. I don't know what I did to deserve this. Amaka turned to her, calm and collected. You didn't do one thing, Nneka. You did many. But this, she pointed gently to Nneka's chest, isn't punishment. It's consequences. Tears welled up in Nneka's eyes. I'm not here to judge you, Amaka added. But don't sit in your dirt and expect pity. Get up, clean your life, start again. Nobody can do that for you. Nneka nodded, but the weight in her eyes showed she wasn't ready. As Amaka stood to leave, her father walked her to the gate. You've done well, my daughter, he said. Your mother would have been proud. Amaka smiled. I know, I carry her strength. And with that, she entered her car and drove off. Clean, strong, and whole. Behind her, the gate creaked shut, and Nneka sat in silence, staring at her reflection in the glass door, not recognizing the woman looking back. The end. Some of the lessons to be learned from this story are: when you think you're protecting your child by not grooming her, you are creating an avenue for disaster in the future. Learn to treat other people's children right, even if they are not yours. You don't know what the future might bring. As a father, always ensure to be in the lives of your children, most especially when they are being raised by women who aren't their mothers. I hope with these few points, I hope you learned one or two from this story. Kindly leave in the comments what you also learned from this story, and I'll see you in the next one. Till then, my loves, bye!
Thank you so much for watching till the end. Please click on the subscribe button to support us, turn on the post notification to get notified when I upload a new story, like, share, and comment your thoughts. Till then, bye!